Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. Captain Nathan Hale, a decorated officer of the United Earth Fleet, is on a routine scouting mission in the outer reaches of the Andromeda Expanse. With a crew of seasoned explorers, he navigates the advanced starship Elysium through an uncharted nebula, his ship cutting through the stars as they approach a mysterious anomaly that's been detected by the fleet's sensors. The anomaly leads to the discovery of a massive, ancient alien structure buried deep within the heart of the nebula. This object, once thought to be a myth, has the potential to change the course of humanity's future, an artifact that could unlock knowledge capable of altering the balance of power in the galaxy. Inciting incident. Upon closer inspection, Nathan and his crew detect signs of a highly advanced alien civilization near the anomaly. Just as they prepare to make contact, the Elysium is struck by a sudden, violent gravitational force. The ship is pulled into a warping rift, spiraling into an unknown region of space. The Elysium crashes on a vibrant, hostile world. Nathan and his crew are forced to make an emergency landing, their ship heavily damaged. As they scramble to assess the situation and tend to the wounded, Nathan realizes this planet is unlike any they've encountered before. Alien flora and fauna tower over the landscape, glowing with bioluminescence. The air itself feels different, as if the atmosphere is charged with energy. And then, as night falls, strange lights appear in the sky. They are coming for them. Introduction of the alien princess. In the distance, a group of armored warriors descends from the sky. They are led by a stunning alien figure, her presence exuding power and grace. The woman, wearing intricate golden armor adorned with gems, steps forward. She has skin that glimmers in shades of violet, her eyes luminous like twin moons. She is Princess Xandra of the Derva Dominion, a race of conquerors who rule vast swaths of space. Princess Xandra's appearance is no coincidence. The rift caused by the gravitational anomaly was no accident, it was a signal, an invitation. The Derva Dominion had been waiting for the humans to arrive, but not in the way Nathan expected. Xandra's purpose is not to destroy them, but to study them. However, the presence of a foreign fleet in Derva space presents a grave threat to her kingdom, which is teetering on the edge of a civil war. Conflict. Nathan, initially taken aback by the presence of such a formidable figure, quickly realizes that Xandra is no ordinary ruler. She is a strategic mind, a brilliant tactician with a sense of honor that is rare in her species. Despite the tensions, she orders her troops to stand down and offers an uneasy truce. Her people will aid the humans in escaping this planet, provided they agree to an alliance. Nathan, wary of the true motives behind her offer, remains cautious. But the damage to the Elysium and the hostile alien creatures on the planet leave them with little choice but to cooperate. As the two of them speak, an unspoken connection begins to form. Nathan sees something in Xandra that he cannot deny, a longing for something more than conquest. Xandra, in turn, is intrigued by Nathan's humanity, the way he values life, his respect for his crew, and his willingness to do whatever it takes to protect them. Key event, the first test. Xandra's soldiers escort Nathan and his crew to a fortified city, a sprawling metropolis built into the side of a mountain. The Derva have no love for the humans, seeing them as a mere tool to use in their quest for power, but Xandra insists on showing them respect. She arranges a feast in their honor, though the tension between her people and the humans is palpable. During the feast, a deadly assassination attempt is made on Xandra's life by a rival faction within her own ranks, one that seeks to overthrow her and use the humans as pawns in their own schemes. The attack is swift and brutal, but Nathan's quick thinking and combat prowess save the princess's life. The incident cements the fragile alliance between the humans and the Derva, but it also marks the beginning of an uncertain journey. Xandra, though grateful, knows that this is only the beginning of much larger challenges. The Elysium was beyond repair. Nathan Hale knew it the moment he laid eyes on the wreckage. His crew had done their best to salvage what they could, but without the advanced technology of their starship, they were stranded, on a hostile world, no less, one that teetered on the brink of civil war. The Derva, despite their terrifying might, were not a united people. Xandra's reign was fragile, and every step forward felt like treading on the edge of a knife. Yet, despite the tension, there was something undeniable between Nathan and Princess Xandra. A connection forged through necessity and mutual respect, but deepened by something unspoken. Xandra's quiet strength, her defiance in the face of insurmountable odds, fascinated him. He couldn't help but admire her, yet, he couldn't fully trust her either. He knew the Derva were capable of incredible cruelty. As he and his crew followed Xandra's command to the heart of the Derva capital city, the alien architecture was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen. Towering spires of metallic obsidian reflected the light of a binary sun. Floating platforms zipped through the air, crisscrossing between towers. Everywhere he looked, technology blended seamlessly with nature. Bioluminescent plants stretched their tendrils towards the sky, their veins glowing in the night like forgotten stars. Xandra led him through the bustling city streets, her regal figure never once faltering as she passed her people. The Derva bowed their heads in her presence, but Nathan could see the wariness in their eyes. Despite her outward composure, there was a shadow in her gaze, something heavy, almost haunted. The Raksha threat. The council hall was vast, its high ceilings disappearing into darkness. A single massive stone table dominated the center of the room, its surface glowing with faint, pulsing lines of alien script. Xandra took her place at the head of the table, with Nathan sitting across from her, flanked by his officers and a handful of Xandra's most trusted advisors. "I've told you the story of the Raksha," Xandra began, her voice low and steady, "but now I will show you the truth." She tapped a sequence of symbols on the table, and a holographic projection flared to life. A warship appeared, unlike any Nathan had ever seen. Its sleek, jagged form seemed to ripple with dark energy, its surface shifting like liquid metal. It was alive in a way that defied reason. And behind it, a vast fleet of similar ships stretched out, covering the void of space. "The Raksha are ancient, older than the Derva, older than most of the known galaxy," Xandra continued. "They are a race of conquerors, but their true power lies not in their technology, but in their ability to control space itself. Their ships can bend the fabric of reality, teleporting entire fleets across vast distances with no warning. They came for the Derva once before, eons ago. We defeated them, but only just. Now, they return with vengeance." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. The technology behind the Raksha ships was incomprehensible, an affront to everything humanity had learned in its centuries of spacefaring history. If they were as powerful as Xandra said, humanity was doomed the moment they laid eyes on Earth. "And what do you propose we do about it?" Nathan asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. Xandra's expression darkened. "I need the artifact. It is the key to defeating the Raksha. It holds the knowledge of their ancient weaknesses, information that was lost to the ages. I believe the humans were meant to find it." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. There was no denying that Xandra had a desperate urgency about her. And though he had his doubts, he knew he had little choice but to help her, for humanity's sake. A fragile alliance. Days passed as Nathan and his crew began to understand the alien world they found themselves on. The Derva, though technologically superior, were a fractured people. Xandra's rule was contested by her brother, Lord Varric, a power-hungry warlord who sought to use the Raksha threat as a means to consolidate his own power. He had already begun rallying his forces, secretly preparing for civil war. To complicate matters further, Xandra's loyalists were few, and the strain of ruling over a divided empire weighed heavily on her. Nathan could sense the tension in her as they spent more time together. Their meetings, once filled with strategy and planning, began to shift. Xandra would share fragments of her past with him, her hopes for her people, the pain of losing her mother to an assassination when she was young, the burden of leadership. There was vulnerability in her, a rawness he hadn't expected. He, in turn, found himself revealing parts of his own soul, sharing the burdens of a soldier's life, the weight of command, the responsibility for every life under his care. As their alliance grew stronger, so did the undeniable pull between them. It was a dangerous thing, he knew. There was no place for love in a war, no time for feelings when the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. But still, he couldn't ignore the way his heart raced when she was near, the way her presence seemed to calm the storm in his mind. The discovery. One night, deep within the Derva archives, Nathan found himself staring at a hologram of the artifact, an orb that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. It was small, no bigger than his fist, and yet it pulsed with such energy that it almost seemed alive. It was said to have been created by the first Derva queen, a weapon of unimaginable power designed to hold the secrets of the Raksha. Xandra appeared behind him, her footsteps soft. "It is said that only a human can activate it," she said quietly, her voice filled with a strange mixture of awe and fear. Nathan turned to face her, raising an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because," she whispered, her gaze never leaving the orb, "the artifact responds to human biology. You and your kind have the key to unlock its secrets." But even as the words left her lips, Nathan sensed something was wrong. The Raksha would not wait forever. The time to act was growing shorter by the day, and with every passing moment, the shadow of their fleet loomed closer. And then, in that quiet chamber, with only the faint hum of the artifact filling the air, Nathan made a choice. He would unlock its secrets. He would do whatever it took to protect humanity, even if it meant trusting a Derva princess who was more enigmatic, and dangerous, than he had ever imagined. The city shook as the first shockwave hit, rattling the towers of black stone and sending plumes of dust into the air. Nathan's instincts kicked in, and he immediately sprang into action. The alarm blared across the compound as soldiers rushed past, their armored forms a blur against the backdrop of the glowing cityscape. Xandra stood frozen for a moment, her eyes wide with fear, before she squared her shoulders and drew herself up to her full height. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice sharp. "The Raksha have arrived." Nathan didn't need any more explanation. He turned and sprinted toward the exit of the archives, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the distant rumble of engines in the sky, a sound that sent a chill through him. The Raksha were known for their ability to bend space, and now, he realized, that power was being turned against them. As he raced through the corridors, his mind raced with questions. How had the Raksha found them so quickly? Xandra had mentioned their ability to fold space, but this was far too fast. Something wasn't right. He caught up to Xandra at the entrance to the command center, where her generals had already begun mobilizing. "The Raksha are already within orbit," one of her commanders reported, his voice tense. "Their ships are too close. We don't have enough time to mount a defense." "We fight anyway," Xandra declared, her voice carrying the weight of a queen's authority. "Tell the fleet to prepare for battle. We will not fall without a fight." Nathan's gut twisted. He knew the Derva were formidable, but he also knew the Raksha's technology was something beyond anything the Derva could counter. Even with their advanced ships and weapons, they stood little chance against an enemy who could manipulate space itself. Xandra turned to Nathan, her face softening for a brief moment. "You and your crew must get to the artifact. It is our last hope." Nathan nodded grimly, understanding the gravity of the situation. The artifact held the key to defeating the Raksha, but they had no idea how to activate it, or if they could. It was humanity's only leverage in this galactic game of survival, but the clock was ticking. They couldn't afford to fail. A fractured alliance. As they made their way through the underground tunnels to the hidden chamber where the artifact was kept, tension mounted. Xandra's face was set in grim determination, but Nathan could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. "We may not survive this," she said quietly, her gaze flicking to the holographic map that guided them through the maze-like corridors beneath the city. Nathan looked at her, his voice low but steady. We'll make it through, Xandra. You're not alone in this. She gave him a fleeting glance, and for a moment, the walls between them seemed to drop. But then, just as quickly, she turned her gaze forward, her expression hardening once more. Nathan knew it wasn't just the threat of the Raksha that haunted her, it was her fractured reign, the constant political strife that threatened to tear her kingdom apart. As they entered the chamber, the artifact sat at the center of the room, bathed in an ethereal light. It was a small orb, no larger than a human fist, but its surface shimmered with shifting patterns of light, as though the very fabric of the universe was contained within it. Nathan couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he approached it. "Are you sure this is the right choice?" Xandra asked, her voice strained. "The artifact is a weapon, one that could change the fate of entire civilizations. If you activate it incorrectly." "I don't have a choice," Nathan replied. "We don't have time to second-guess ourselves. The Raksha will be here any minute." He reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the artifact. It hummed softly in response, as though sensing his touch. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the orb began to pulse with a bright, blinding light, and the room shook violently. Nathan stumbled back, instinctively shielding his eyes from the glare. As the light subsided, the artifact floated into the air, spinning slowly. It sent a wave of energy through the room, and for a brief moment, Nathan felt a strange connection to it, as though the artifact was speaking to him in a language that bypassed reason and entered his very soul. Then, a voice filled his mind, ancient and alien, but strangely familiar. "The Raksha are coming." The words were not spoken aloud, but Nathan heard them as clearly as if they had been. His pulse quickened, and he glanced over at Xandra, who looked just as shaken. "What did it say?" she demanded. "I'm not sure," Nathan replied, his mind racing. "But it's clear that the artifact recognizes the threat. We need to act fast." The ground trembled again, this time with far more intensity. The walls of the chamber cracked, and the air was filled with the distant sounds of explosions. The Raksha were descending. The Derva defense fleet was in disarray, and it wouldn't be long before their capital was overrun. The invasion begins. Back outside, the sky was a chaos of fire and metal. The Raksha fleet had entered orbit, their ships descending like shadows upon the planet. The ground trembled with each impact, and Nathan knew that time was running out. Xandra's commanders were scrambling to coordinate a defense, but it was clear that they were fighting a losing battle. Even with the knowledge of the artifact, the Raksha's ships were too advanced. The city's shields were failing, and the blast waves from the first wave of strikes were felt even deep underground. As Nathan and Xandra made their way back to the command center, they could see the sky above them filling with enemy craft. The Raksha ships were massive, each one a terrifying monolith of shifting, black metal. Their forms were alive in a way, constantly morphing and reshaping, as though they were crafted from the very void of space itself. "This is it," Xandra whispered, her voice trembling for the first time since Nathan had met her. "We're outmatched." "We don't have to beat them," Nathan said, his voice firm. "We just need to survive long enough to use the artifact. If it can help us unlock their weaknesses, we can turn the tide." But even as he spoke, he knew the odds were slim. The Raksha were relentless, and without their own advanced technology, the Derva didn't stand a chance. The walls of the command center shook as another massive impact reverberated through the ground. Nathan Hale's heart pounded in his chest. He stood beside Princess Xandra, the artifact pulsing softly in his hand, its strange light casting eerie shadows across the room. The weight of the moment was heavy, the Raksha were descending, their fleet in orbit above Derva, and the city around them was crumbling under the onslaught. There was no time left. Outside, the sky was darkened by the silhouette of countless Raksha ships, their sleek, shifting forms blotting out the twin suns. In the distance, the low hum of their engines resonated through the air, a constant reminder of the imminent destruction. "Can you activate it?" Xandra's voice broke through Nathan's thoughts, her expression a mix of hope and desperation. Can the artifact really give us the power to defeat them? Nathan held the orb closer, studying its glowing surface. His fingers tingled where they made contact, the pulsing energy of the artifact seeping into him. I'm not sure, he admitted. But it's the only shot we have. A burst of static interrupted their conversation, and a general's face appeared on the screen in front of them. His expression was grim. We've lost most of our defenses, Your Highness, he reported. The Raksha ground forces have breached the outer perimeter. We're holding on by a thread. Xandra's face tightened, her eyes narrowing. We can't afford to fall. We will fight to the last. She turned to Nathan, her gaze determined. Take the artifact to the war room. We need to find a way to use it, or this entire city will fall. Nathan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The Durva were warriors, but they were no match for the overwhelming power of the Raksha. They needed more than just courage, they needed an advantage. And the artifact might be their only hope. The war room. The war room was located deep within the heart of the city, a secure facility that had been designed to withstand even the most intense of bombardments. Inside, the walls were lined with holographic maps, displaying the location of enemy forces as they advanced on the city. Xandra's military leaders were already gathered, their faces drawn with worry. Nathan walked in, the artifact still glowing softly in his hand. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately as everyone turned to face him. Xandra stepped forward, standing tall as she addressed her commanders. We must make a stand here, she said. We cannot allow the Raksha to take this city. We fight with everything we have. Nathan, standing beside her, took a deep breath and placed the artifact on the table. He didn't know how it worked, didn't understand how it could possibly be the key to defeating an enemy like the Raksha. But Xandra had put her faith in him, and that was enough to push him forward. This is our last chance, he said. We don't know what will happen when we try to activate it, but we have to believe it's the key. We have no other choice. One of the generals, a grizzled veteran with a harsh expression, stepped forward. Your Highness, we've had our backs to the wall before, but never like this. The Raksha, they are too powerful. We don't even know what their weakness is. Xandra's eyes hardened. And we won't find out if we surrender. We have one chance to turn the tide, and we will take it. Nathan felt the weight of the moment. He glanced at the artifact once more, feeling the strange connection pulling at him. The hum of energy seemed to grow louder, as though it were alive. He pressed his palm against it, and the light flared even brighter, causing everyone in the room to flinch. A voice filled his mind, ancient and alien but somehow, familiar. The words were not spoken aloud, but Nathan could hear them clearly in his thoughts. The enemy you face is not one you can defeat with mere strength. The Raksha bend the fabric of reality, but they are not invulnerable. The voice seemed to reverberate through him, sending a shiver down his spine. To unlock the power to defeat them, you must understand the nature of the universe itself. Nathan's heart raced. He looked up at Xandra, his breath quickening. It's speaking to me, he whispered. The artifact, it's showing me something. Xandra stepped closer, her eyes wide. What is it saying? What do we need to do? Before Nathan could answer, the room was jolted by another violent tremor. The Raksha were getting closer, and the battle was already raging in the streets above. We don't have time for this, one of the generals barked. We need to act now. Nathan's mind raced, the voice of the artifact still echoing in his thoughts. There was something about its message that didn't make sense. Understanding the nature of the universe itself? How was that even possible? Suddenly, the artifact pulsed brighter than ever before, sending a shockwave through the room. The light seemed to bend and warp as the ground rumbled beneath them. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being twisted. Then, a vision flashed before Nathan's eyes, a vision of the Raksha fleet, their ships phasing in and out of existence, slipping between the folds of space like shadows. But within the chaos, there was a flicker of something, a weakness. To defeat the Raksha, you must sever their connection to the fabric of reality. They are not masters of space, they are prisoners of it. The vision disappeared, and Nathan stumbled back, gasping for breath. He glanced at Xandra, his mind racing. I know how we can beat them. The plan. Nathan explained the vision he had seen, and the pieces began to fall into place. The Raksha weren't truly bending space, they were exploiting its weaknesses, finding cracks in the universe and slipping through them. But those cracks were not infinite. There was a limit to their power, and if they could find a way to disrupt that connection, they could halt the Raksha's advances. Xandra's face lit up with determination. If we can sever their connection to the fabric of reality, we can stop them. But how do we do that? Nathan took a deep breath. The artifact, it's more than just a weapon. It's a key. I think it can manipulate the energy that the Raksha are using to fold space. If we can harness it, we can disrupt their ships, weaken their forces. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. The plan was risky, but it was their only option. The Raksha were closing in, and the city was all but lost. But if they could use the artifact to destabilize the Raksha's space-bending technology, they might just have a chance. We'll need to get to the central nexus of their fleet, Xandra said, her voice unwavering. If we strike there, we can disrupt their entire system. Then let's get to work, Nathan said, his voice steady. We've got a fight to win. The city of Derva was a war zone. What had once been a shining beacon of hope, home to a civilization that spanned across the stars, was now a crumbling ruin. The sounds of explosions reverberated through the streets, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke. Above, the Raksha fleet loomed like a dark omen, their ships blotting out the twin suns. The once proud Derva stood on the brink of annihilation, and the fate of entire worlds rested in the hands of a human and an alien princess. Nathan Hale and Xandra moved swiftly through the shattered corridors of the command center. Around them, soldiers and civilians alike were scrambling to prepare for the final defense. The Raksha forces had breached the gates, and their ground troops were advancing with terrifying efficiency. But Nathan's mind was focused on a single task, to use the artifact to sever the Raksha's connection to the fabric of reality. If they could strike at the heart of the Raksha's fleet, they might just have a chance to turn the tide. We have to move quickly, Xandra said, her voice low but determined. The Raksha are already inside the city. If we don't act now, they'll tear this place apart. Nathan nodded, clutching the artifact close. It hummed faintly in his hand, as though it were responding to the urgency in the air. The closer they got to the heart of the Raksha invasion, the stronger the artifact seemed to pulse, as if it could sense the enemy's presence. We're almost there, Nathan said, glancing at the holographic map projected on the wall. They were heading toward the central nexus of the Raksha fleet, a location deep in the city, hidden beneath the surface, where their space-folding technology was believed to be centered. It was their only hope. The team that had assembled for this mission was small but determined. Xandra, Nathan, and a handful of elite Derva soldiers, each one wearing heavy combat armor and armed with advanced weapons, were the last line of defense. They moved quickly, dodging the wreckage of destroyed buildings and the scattered remnants of the once vibrant city. The Raksha's forces were everywhere, their sleek, shadow-like soldiers patrolling the streets with an air of cold indifference. As they neared the central nexus, Nathan's heart began to pound in his chest. The artifact in his hand pulsed with increasing intensity, the strange energy emanating from it sending a shiver down his spine. It was as if the artifact were alive, aware of what was at stake. And deep down, Nathan felt a strange certainty that this was the moment, the point of no return. The central nexus. The entrance to the central nexus was hidden beneath a massive, collapsed skyscraper, its jagged edges like the teeth of some ancient, monstrous beast. Nathan and Xandra led the team through a narrow passage that had been carved out of the debris. The walls were damp with moisture, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and decay. They moved silently, their footsteps muffled by the dust-covered floors. As they reached the heart of the nexus, they were met with a sight that left them momentarily stunned. The room was vast, stretching far beyond what Nathan had imagined. A massive, swirling vortex of energy dominated the center of the chamber. It was as if the very fabric of space had been torn open, revealing a swirling, chaotic storm of light and shadow. This was the heart of the Rakshas' power, their ability to manipulate space, to fold it and twist it at will. "This is it," Xandra whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. "This is the source of their power." Nathan stepped forward, feeling the pull of the vortex. The artifact in his hand began to hum louder, its glow intensifying. He could feel the energy radiating from it, resonating with the strange, alien energy in the room. It was as if the artifact were made for this moment, designed to counter the Rakshas' control over the very fabric of space itself. He held the artifact aloft, and the room seemed to tremble. The swirling vortex began to react, as if it sensed the presence of the artifact and understood its potential to disrupt the delicate balance of space. Nathan's heart raced. He didn't fully understand how the artifact worked, but he knew that they had no time left to figure it out. He needed to act now. "Xandra, get everyone back," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "This is going to get dangerous." Xandra nodded and gestured for the soldiers to retreat to the far end of the chamber. The tension in the air was palpable as Nathan raised the artifact higher. The light from the artifact flared brighter, and the swirling vortex in the center of the room began to distort, the space around it bending and warping. Suddenly, a sharp, metallic screech echoed through the chamber. The Raksha were here. A small squad of Raksha soldiers emerged from the shadows, their dark forms shifting and blending with the environment. They moved with incredible speed, their bodies fluid and almost inhuman, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. The soldiers' weapons hummed with energy, and their leader, a tall, imposing figure, stepped forward, his cold, calculating gaze locking onto Nathan. "So, this is the human who thinks he can challenge us," the Raksha leader said in a voice that sounded like the screech of metal scraping against stone. "You are foolish to believe you can stop us. The universe bends to our will." Nathan's grip tightened on the artifact. "We'll see about that," he muttered, his voice low and defiant. Without warning, the Raksha soldiers lunged forward, their weapons raised. But as they neared Nathan, the artifact flared with blinding light, and the space around them seemed to twist and crack. The Raksha soldiers froze, their bodies vibrating with energy as the fabric of reality around them began to destabilize. The vortex in the center of the room pulsed violently, and the ground beneath their feet began to shift. The Raksha leader snarled and raised his hand, attempting to warp the space around them, but it was too late. The artifact's energy surged, and a wave of energy exploded outward, engulfing the Raksha soldiers in a sphere of light. The room exploded in chaos as the space around them twisted and folded. The Raksha soldiers cried out, their bodies flickering in and out of existence as the energy from the artifact slammed into them. The leader struggled, his form distorting as if he were being torn apart by the very fabric of space itself. Nathan could feel the strain on his body as the artifact pulsed with overwhelming energy. His vision blurred, and his muscles screamed in protest, but he held on. The artifact was draining him, but it was working. The Raksha were losing control. "Xandra," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of energy. "I need more time. Hold them off." Xandra, standing at the far end of the room, nodded sharply. She drew her weapon and fired a volley of energy blasts at the remaining Raksha soldiers. The blast struck with pinpoint precision, disorienting them long enough for the artifact's power to fully destabilize the vortex. With a final, ear-piercing scream, the Raksha leader collapsed into the collapsing vortex, his form disintegrating as the fabric of space tore apart around him. The remaining soldiers followed suit, their bodies flickering and disintegrating into nothingness. The room fell silent. Nathan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The artifact in his hand stopped pulsing, its light fading as the last of the Raksha forces vanished. He felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but there was no time to rest. The battle wasn't over yet. Xandra rushed to his side, kneeling next to him. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "You've stopped them." Nathan managed a weak smile. "It's not over yet. The Raksha will come again. We have to be ready." As the chamber settled into an eerie stillness, the weight of their victory, and the knowledge that it was only a temporary reprieve, hung heavily in the air. The ground beneath Nathan's feet continued to tremble as the last of the Raksha soldiers disintegrated into nothingness. The artifact in his hand had stopped pulsing, its glow fading as the chaotic vortex at the center of the room collapsed into itself. The tension that had filled the air seemed to lift for a brief moment, but Nathan knew they weren't done yet. The real fight was still ahead. Xandra knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder, but her eyes were fixed on the distant horizon, where the last remnants of the Raksha fleet were still hovering in orbit. A deep sense of unease gripped her, and Nathan could feel it too, the uneasy silence that followed the battle. "Is it over?" Nathan asked hoarsely, struggling to catch his breath. The artifact's energy had taken a toll on him, his body still shaking from the intensity of the strain. Xandra didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on the flickering remnants of the portal, where the last of the Raksha forces had been torn apart. "It's not over," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "This was only one battle. The Raksha will regroup, and they will come again." Nathan looked up at her, eyes filled with determination. "Then we'll be ready. We've beaten them once, we can do it again." Xandra's eyes softened, but there was no trace of doubt in them. "You're right. We've done the impossible, but we must keep pushing. We need to unite the galaxy against the Raksha. If they have any hope of being stopped, it will come from all of us." Nathan's eyes flicked to the shattered city around them. Despite the destruction, there was a glimmer of hope in the air. They had won, but it wasn't just the battle that mattered, it was what came next. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, Derva began to rebuild. The people who had once been on the verge of extinction after the first wave of the Raksha invasion now stood together, united by the shared experience of survival. The devastation was still immense, but there was a new sense of resolve in the air. Nathan could feel it as he walked through the streets, surrounded by survivors, soldiers, civilians, and families, who had been brought together by the events that had unfolded. The leaders of the galaxy's various species reached out, offering support, troops, and resources to help rebuild what had been lost. Derva's allies were quick to send aid, and the promise of unity echoed throughout the galaxy. But even as hope began to grow, Nathan knew that they were only at the beginning of a much larger war. In the command center, Xandra addressed the gathered leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions. The faces of representatives from various planets, humans, Derva, and other species, were visible on the holographic displays surrounding her. It was a rare moment of cooperation, a testament to the desperate need for unity in the face of a common enemy. "Today, we've witnessed what happens when humanity and the Derva stand together," Xandra said, her voice steady, but her eyes sharp. "We've proven that we can defeat the Raksha. But we cannot do it alone." Nathan stood at her side, his hand still resting on the artifact, now contained within a protective casing. It had been weeks since the battle in the Nexus, but the power of the artifact was still a mystery. They had studied it, but every attempt to understand its full potential had ended in frustration. Its origins were alien, and its purpose unclear, but it had been the key to stopping the Raksha forces temporarily. "The Raksha have the might of an empire," Xandra continued. "We must unite the galaxy, not just to defend Derva, but to launch a counteroffensive against them. We must drive them back, or we risk losing everything." Nathan felt a weight in his chest as he looked around the room. He saw the same resolve in the eyes of the others, but also the heavy uncertainty of what lay ahead. The battle they had fought had been a victory, yes, but it was only a temporary respite. The true war was just beginning. "We can't afford to wait," Nathan spoke up, his voice clear. "We know the Raksha will regroup. We need to strike now, while they're still reeling from the defeat. This may be our only chance." Xandra nodded, her eyes meeting Nathan's with unspoken understanding. "We'll strike while we have the advantage," she said. "But we'll need every ally we can get. I've already sent word to the leaders of the galaxy. It's time to unite. Together, we'll end the Raksha threat once and for all." A reluctant alliance. Weeks passed as the galaxy's leaders worked tirelessly to form an alliance. The Raksha threat had galvanized even the most divided factions, and an army was slowly being assembled to take the fight to the heart of the Raksha Empire. Despite the difficulties in communication and the slow pace of intergalactic diplomacy, it was clear that humanity, the Derva, and other species were beginning to trust each other. Nathan found himself at the forefront of this alliance, a reluctant leader in his own right. Though he had never sought the spotlight, his role in the battle to save Derva had earned him the respect of many, and the human race now looked to him as a symbol of hope. But the alliance wasn't without its tensions. Many of the galaxy's factions were still wary of one another, hesitant to truly trust those they had once seen as enemies. It was only through Xandra's leadership, her ability to unite disparate factions, that they had managed to come this far. Nathan and Xandra continued to work together, the bond between them growing stronger with each passing day. They shared a vision, a future where their people were not bound by fear or divided by old grudges. But there were darker forces at play as well. Xandra had begun to sense something else, something far more dangerous than the Raksha. Whispers of a power beyond the Raksha's control, a force that had shaped the galaxy long before their invasion. And that power, Xandra feared, was now awake. A warning. One evening, as the galaxy's leaders gathered to finalize their plans, a message arrived. A transmission from the far reaches of space, from a world no one had ever heard of. The message was brief but chilling: "The Raksha are merely pawns. You are all in grave danger." Xandra and Nathan exchanged a troubled glance. The warning had come too late, the war had already begun, and the Raksha were regrouping faster than anticipated. But there was something more. They were not alone in the galaxy, and there were forces, ancient and powerful, that had remained hidden for eons, watching, waiting. Nathan clenched his fists. The battle was far from over. And now, it seemed, the fate of the galaxy was in their hands more than ever before. Cliffhanger ending for Part 6. As the message ended, a new signal emerged, this one from an unknown ship, drifting in the deep reaches of space. The ship's design was unlike anything they had ever seen, its surface covered in symbols that none could read. And yet, on its hull, was a single word, etched in an ancient, forgotten language. Awakening. The true war was only just beginning. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.